A clay tablet sits in a museum vault in Istanbul. Catalog number K.3657. Most visitors walk past it without a second glance. But carved into its cuneiform script is something that has geologists, archaeologists, and cartographers quietly arguing for decades. This tablet doesn't just describe an underground world, it gives directions to get there. Precise, geographical, accurate enough that when researchers overlaid the coordinates with modern topographical maps, they found a location that matches every single clue the Sumerians recorded, and that location has a cave entrance that locals have been guarding for over 4,000 years. Today we're going to decode exactly what the tablet says, trace the 3 navigational clues it contains, and investigate whether the entrance the Sumerians described actually exists. If ancient mysteries backed by real archaeology are your thing, hit subscribe. I cover forgotten civilizations and suppressed discoveries every week. The tablet was excavated from the ancient city of Nippur in what is now modern Iraq. It dates to approximately 2400 BCE and is part of what Sumerian scholars call the Kur corpus, a collection of texts describing a physical realm beneath the Earth's surface. Not the underworld of the dead, not a spiritual metaphor. The Sumerians called it Kur, and they described it the way a traveler describes a place they have actually been. Kur appears in dozens of Sumerian texts, but K.3657 is different from all of them. Most tablets describe Kur in mythological terms, as the domain of the god Nergal, or the resting place of the dead. But this tablet reads like a navigation log. It contains measurements, landmarks, travel time estimates, specific geological descriptions, the kind of language you use when you want someone else to find a place you have already found. Dr. Samuel Noah Kramer at the University of Pennsylvania spent decades studying the Kur texts. In a 1967 paper that most of his colleagues ignored, Kramer noted that K.3657 contained what he called anomalous precision. The text was too specific to be purely mythological. The geographical references were too grounded in physical reality to be dismissed as poetry. Kramer believed the tablet was documenting a real location using the cosmological language available to Bronze Age writers. He was right. But he never got to find out where the location actually was. That breakthrough came later. And it came from 3 clues buried in the tablet's navigational passages. The first clue. The tablet describes the entrance to Kur as located near what it calls the mountain where the sun is swallowed. For centuries, this phrase was interpreted as a poetic description of sunset. The sun disappearing behind a mountain. Standard ancient metaphor, scholars said. Move on. But Kramer noticed something in the original cuneiform. The Sumerian word being translated as swallowed, gu, could equally be translated as enters, not the sun vanishing, the sun entering a mountain with an opening large enough for sunlight to penetrate deep inside. This is not mythology. This is a geological feature. Mountains with large cave mouths oriented toward the east or southeast can channel direct sunlight hundreds of meters into their interiors during specific times of year. Ancient peoples documented these events extensively because they were spectacular, predictable, and treated as sacred. The entrance to Kur was marked by one of these natural solar events. The second clue. The tablet describes a river near the entrance that the Sumerians called Idu Galgal, which translates as the great river that walks backward. For thousands of years, this phrase made no sense. Rivers don't reverse direction, except when they do. Tidal bores, the phenomenon where ocean tides push salt water upstream against a river's natural flow, were documented across the ancient world. But the tablet's phrase isn't just backward. It says the river walks backward into stone. Into stone, a river that reverses direction and then disappears into rock. That is an extremely specific geological description. It describes a river that flows into a cave system and due to a subterranean lake connected to groundwater pressure, actually reverses its flow direction periodically. These formations exist. They are rare, and they are concentrated in specific types of limestone karst geology found only in certain regions. The third clue is the most precise. The tablet says the entrance to Kur is 7 days' journey from the land where bronze is born. Bronze requires 2 things, copper and tin. The The Sumerians had copper sources relatively nearby in Anatolia. But tin was different. Tin was rare in Mesopotamia. The nearest major tin deposits in the ancient world were in Central Asia, specifically in the mountain zones of what are now Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, and Western China. These were the lands where bronze was born. 7 days' journey by ancient caravan from the major tin production centers of Bronze Age Bactria places you in a very specific geographical zone. Researchers spent decades trying to find the convergence point of all three clues: a mountain with a sun-channeling entrance, a river that reverses into stone, 7 days from a Bronze Age tin source. In 1997, a team of geographers at Moscow State University, working from Soviet-era topographical surveys, found it, the Fergana Valley. Located across the modern borders of Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan, the Fergana Valley was one of the most significant Bronze Age mining centers in the ancient world. Multiple tin and copper deposits have been excavated there. Ancient smelting sites dating to 2500 BCE have been found across the valley floor. Trade routes connecting it to Mesopotamia are documented in Sumerian merchant tablets recovered from the city of Ur, describing journeys of many months to reach the lands of the Great Mountains. The Fergana Valley sits at the center of every navigational clue on the tablet. And inside the Fergana Valley, there is a cave system that matches every single geographical description the Sumerians recorded. It is called Kani Gut. In local Tajik folklore, it translates as the gateway. The entrance sits at the base of a mountain that faces southeast. During the summer solstice, sunlight penetrates over 200 meters into the cave's main corridor, the mountain where the sun enters. Inside the system, an underground river flows through several of the main chambers. Due to pressure changes in the subterranean lake connected to the river, the flow direction reverses twice daily, the river that walks backward into stone, and the cave walls are embedded with massive selenite crystal formations and fluorite deposits that emit a cold bioluminescent glow in darkness. Early explorers who entered Kani Gut described the sensation of standing under a sky of frozen stars. This is what the Sumerians called Kur. Now, here is where modern science intersects with ancient navigation in an unexpected way. A 2019 study published in Nature analyzed genetic samples from populations living across Central and East Asia. The research team, led by Dr. Chuan Chao Wang, found something unusual in the Tian Shan mountain communities near the Fergana Valley. A genetic bottleneck dated to approximately 2400 BCE, the same period the tablet was created, but it was not caused by disease or famine. The genetic diversity did not collapse. It shifted, as if a portion of the population migrated somewhere and returned generations later with the same base markers but different mitochondrial DNA patterns. The most remarkable finding was this: modern villages near the Kani Gut cave system carry genetic markers that most closely resemble ancient Mesopotamian DNA samples recovered from Sumerian burial sites, not spread along trade routes the way normal migration patterns look, concentrated, specifically around the cave entrance. How did Mesopotamian DNA end up in isolated mountain villages near a specific cave system in Central Asia? The conventional answer is trade route intermarriage. Merchants passing through, settling temporarily, leaving descendants. But the pattern does not match a trade route. It matches a settlement, a sustained, permanent presence at one specific location. Soviet geological teams explored the Kani Gut system in 1961 and 1966. Their surveys mapped approximately 14 kilometers of accessible passages. Sonar readings suggested the system extended considerably deeper, with acoustic signatures indicating massive hollow chambers far below the mapped sections. Temperature readings showed significant geothermal activity at depth. The cave was not a dead geological formation. It was thermally active, acoustically anomalous, and structurally enormous. But the Soviet teams found something else: evidence of human habitation, ancient habitation, pottery fragments dated to the Bronze Age, tool remnants, fire pits showing repeated use over long periods, and carved into the cave walls, approximately 800 meters from the entrance at multiple locations descending deeper into the system, were symbols, not symbols influenced by Sumerian writing. not symbols that resembled cuneiform from a distance, actual Sumerian cuneiform, thousands of kilometers from Mesopotamia, carved into cave walls deep inside a Central Asian mountain. The discovery was classified in 1967. The Soviet government sealed the caves, citing geological instability. The official documentation was marked restricted access and filed in regional security archives. In the 1990s, portions of those documents were declassified. What they revealed was that the geological instability claim was administrative cover. The real reason for the classification was what the excavation teams reported finding in the deepest accessible chamber. Dr. Viktor Yemelyanenko, one of the senior geologists on the 1966 survey, gave an interview in 1998 shortly before his death. He described what the team found at the lowest point they reached: a stone archway, not a natural formation, manufactured, cut stone, fitted precisely, carved with repeating symbols. The same symbol, repeated across the entire archway surface. The symbol was the Sumerian cuneiform character for Kur. Beyond the archway, Yemelyanenko said, the sonar equipment registered something it could not resolve. A void so large that standard frequency sonar could not map its boundaries. They increased the sonar power. They changed frequencies. Every test gave the same result: an open space extending beyond the range of their equipment in every detectable direction. Not a cave chamber, a void. Yemelyanenko said none of the team spoke for several minutes after the readings came back. In his interview, he described the silence not as confusion, but as something closer to recognition, as if everyone present understood simultaneously that they were standing at a threshold they were not equipped to cross. The caves were sealed 3 months later. Now here is where we need to be precise about what the evidence actually tells us. The hollow earth theory, the idea that a vast civilization exists in a literal hollow interior beneath our feet, is not supported by modern geology. Seismographic data accumulated over a century of earthquake monitoring gives us an extraordinarily detailed picture of Earth's interior: crust, upper mantle, lower mantle, outer core, inner core. No hollow chambers, no vast open voids large enough to house a civilization. The physics do not allow it. But that is not what the Sumerian tablet actually claims. Read K.3657 carefully without the mythology filter, and what you find is a traveler's account. A Mesopotamian scribe documenting an extraordinary natural location encountered during a tin trading expedition. The language of gods and sacred realms is the only vocabulary available to a Bronze Age writer trying to describe something that had no precedent in their experience. A cave system extending dozens of kilometers underground, with rivers that reverse direction, walls that glow with their own light, chambers so large the ceiling is invisible, and a thermal engine at its core that keeps the interior warm despite the depth and darkness. To a Sumerian merchant accustomed to flat desert landscape and open sky, this would not have seemed like a geological feature. It would have seemed like another world. What the Sumerians documented was real. What they interpreted it as reflects their cosmology, not a literal description of Earth's interior structure. The gods of Kur were not divine beings inhabiting a hollow planet. They were most likely the Sumerian mining specialists and technical supervisors who had established permanent operations inside the cave system, men who possessed knowledge of metallurgy, geology, and subterranean navigation that would have seemed supernatural to outside observers. This interpretation is supported by the tablet's own content. K.3657 does not simply say, "Go to Kur to speak with gods." It says, "Go to Kur to learn the secrets of the earth's blood." Sumerian scholars now believe this phrase refers specifically to metallurgical knowledge, smelting, alloying, ore identification, the technical skills that powered the Bronze Age. And the Fergana Valley region sits atop some of Central Asia's richest copper and tin mineral deposits. Bronze Age mining infrastructure has been excavated at multiple sites within 50 kilometers of the Kanai Gut entrance. The tablet was not describing a mythological underworld. It was describing a mining operation so sophisticated, so deep underground, so far from Mesopotamia's flat riverine landscape, that the only available framework for documenting it was the language of sacred geography. A 2018 expedition of independent researchers, geologists, documentary filmmakers, and archaeologists managed to access the degraded Soviet-era seals on the Khani Gut entrance. Local authorities, no longer bound by Soviet security classifications, granted limited access to the outer sections of the cave. The team confirmed the Bronze Age pottery, they confirmed the tool fragments, they documented the cuneiform inscriptions on the cave walls with high-resolution photography, and at approximately 2.4 kilometers into the system, they encountered the collapse zone. Not natural rockfall, placed stone blockage, deliberately arranged. Ground-penetrating radar showed the collapse was only 6 meters deep. Beyond it, the cave system continued, intact, unexcavated, accessible with the right equipment. The inscriptions the team photographed included passages that cross-referenced directly with the text of K.3657, the same phrases, the same geographical descriptions, but the cave inscriptions added something the museum tablet does not contain: warnings. Specific, practical warnings about which passages contained what the inscriptions called the breath that steals life, zones where carbon dioxide concentrations rise high enough to cause unconsciousness within minutes, oxygen-depleted sections where fire will not burn and humans will not remain conscious, instructions about which corridors to follow and which to avoid, framed in the language of divine prohibition but communicating precise physical danger. The Sumerians who traveled to this location were not mystics performing a spiritual journey. They were experienced underground workers who had learned through painful experience which parts of the cave system could kill you. And they documented those lessons in the only format that would be preserved and respected across generations: sacred text. The tablet's instruction about purification of the blood before entry, which scholars long interpreted as ritual cleansing, carries a different meaning now. The Fergana Valley sits at elevations between 1,000 and 3,000 meters. Deep cave systems in this region have significantly altered atmospheric composition compared to the surface: higher CO2, lower oxygen ratios, elevated radon concentrations in certain sections. Modern populations in this region carry the EGLN1 and EPAS1 genetic variants associated with high-altitude oxygen processing adaptation. These are the same variants found in elevated concentrations in the villages near the Khani Gut entrance, concentrations higher than surrounding populations, suggesting strong selective pressure, as if survival in this specific location required this specific genetic adaptation. Ancient Mesopotamian traders arriving from near sea level would not have these adaptations. Traveling from Nippur to a high-altitude cave system and then descending into oxygen-depleted chambers could cause hypoxia, impaired judgment, and in vulnerable individuals, death. Purification of the blood was not a metaphor. It was an ancient medical screening protocol. Only individuals whose bodies could handle the environment were permitted to descend into the deepest sections. The modern village closest to the Khani Gut entrance is called Kaisel Jar. The community maintains a ceremony that has been observed by every generation in living memory. On the summer solstice, when sunlight penetrates deepest into the cave corridor, certain families carry offerings to the entrance: bread, salt, bronze artifacts, and recite phrases in a language none of them understand. In 2015, a linguistic anthropologist recorded and analyzed the recitations. The language was archaic Sumerian, prayers requesting safe passage from the dwellers below, safety for the village, protection during descent. A community in Central Asia has been reciting Sumerian prayers at a cave entrance for over 4,000 years, not because anyone told them to, because the practice was passed down through enough generations that the meaning dissolved, but the ritual survived. What was originally a work crew's safety checklist, recited before entering a dangerous mine, became a sacred ceremony performed in a language nobody remembered. The excavation permits applied for by the 2018 team remain in bureaucratic review. The Uzbek and Tajik governments have shown limited interest in funding further exploration. The region is remote. The political landscape is complex. The cost of excavating 6 meters of placed stone blockage and mapping what lies beyond it is significant. So here is what we actually know. The Sumerian tablet K.3657 contains 3 precise navigational clues. All 3 point to the Fergana Valley. The Canny-Gut cave system matches every geographical description in the text with specific, verifiable accuracy. Archaeological evidence confirms Sumerian presence in the region during the Bronze Age. Genetic evidence shows sustained Mesopotamian contact with the specific community nearest the cave entrance. Soviet exploration in the 1960s found Bronze Age materials, Sumerian inscriptions, and a manufactured stone archway with the Sumerian symbol for Kur, before sealing the cave and classifying the discovery. Modern attempts to investigate further have encountered systematic obstruction, and beyond a deliberately placed 6-meter collapse, the cave system continues. What the Sumerians called Kur was not a hollow earth civilization, but it was not mythology either. It was the most significant natural and industrial site of the Bronze Age, a cave system so vast, so geologically remarkable, so rich in the mineral resources that powered ancient civilization, that the people who discovered and worked it encoded its location in sacred text, in genetic memory, in ritual ceremony, and in stone inscriptions, ensuring that no matter what happened to the civilization above, the knowledge of this place would survive. They wanted it to be found again. They left a map. The map still works. The entrance to what the Sumerians called Kur sits in the Fergana Valley today, beneath a mountain where sunlight enters every summer solstice, beside a river that still reverses into stone, 6 days' journey from the ancient bronze mines that fed the greatest civilization of the ancient world, beyond a collapsed tunnel that someone built to block it, beyond permits that have not been approved, beyond governments that sealed it in the 1960s and have not explained why. The tablet in Istanbul is not a myth. It is not a fairy tale. It is a document, a precise, verifiable, navigable document written by practical people who found something extraordinary and needed to make sure the information survived. They were not mystics who invented underground gods to explain what they did not understand. They were miners, explorers, scientists in the only form that Bronze Age civilization allowed, and they went somewhere we have not fully followed yet. Somewhere underneath a mountain in Central Asia, past a 6-meter wall of placed stone, the answer is waiting. The tablet gave us the location. We just have not decided to go yet. If this kind of deep investigation into suppressed archaeology is what you're here for, subscribe now. Next week, I'm covering the Sumerian king list and the bones found beneath the royal tombs of Ur that don't match any known human skeletal structure. Click the video on screen.